What if history didn't tell us everything? Beneath ruins and relics lie stories that defy logic. Monuments too precise for their time. Artifacts no one can explain. And civilizations that vanished without a trace. This is a journey into the unanswered. A search for what the past refuses to reveal. The Great Pyramid of Giza. Who really built it and how? Long before modern skyscrapers pierced the sky, before concrete and steel defined progress, a structure rose from the sands of Egypt that still defies comprehension. It stands as though time itself built it, a colossal, immovable monument to mystery, the Great Pyramid of Giza. Constructed around 4,500 years ago, this ancient marvel has outlasted kingdoms, outlived empires, and withstood the elements that reduced other wonders to rubble. And yet, despite centuries of study, it holds on to its secrets, like the desert grips its bones. Who built it, and more hauntingly, how? Let's begin not with the pyramid itself, but with the stones. Each massive limestone block used in its construction weighs, on average, 2.5 tons. Some, particularly those used in the inner chambers, tip the scales at 70 tons or more. There are over 2.3 million of them. Their placement is so precise that even today, you cannot fit a razor blade between many of the joints. Mainstream archaeologists believe the pyramid was built during the reign of Pharaoh Khufu, over a span of about 20 years. But let's pause a moment. That would mean placing over 300 blocks every single day, one every few minutes, without the use of modern cranes, machines, or tools made from hardened steel. The official explanation? Ropes, copper chisels, and manpower. A lot of manpower. But that's where the questions deepen. How were these stones transported across the desert from quarries miles away? Some originated from Aswan, nearly 500 miles south. How were they lifted to heights of nearly 500 feet, with each ascending level more precise than the last? Theories range from ramps to levers, but none fully account for the staggering logistics involved. Even more puzzling, no blueprints, no records, no writing inside the pyramid explains its construction. It's entirely void of decoration, no hieroglyphs, no names, no instructions, nothing but smooth stone corridors and chambers cloaked in silence. And then there's the mathematical precision. The base of the Great Pyramid is aligned almost perfectly to true north, off by just 3/60ths of a degree. The proportions of the structure encode pi, phi, and the golden ratio, long before these constants were supposedly discovered. Even the pyramid's height multiplied by a specific factor equals the distance from the Earth to the Sun. Coincidence? Or knowledge we didn't expect ancient builders to possess? There are those who say this is no coincidence at all. Alternative theorists propose radical possibilities, that an older, advanced civilization predating Egypt left this behind. Some whisper about Atlanteans. Others suggest the knowledge to build it came from the stars. Of course, there's no solid proof, only the staggering, silent weight of the structure itself. A weight that seems to press down not just on the sands of Egypt, but on the fragile certainties of our historical timeline. Even the interior chambers of the pyramid remain a source of speculation. The Grand Gallery, the King's Chamber, the strange air shafts pointing to star constellations, none of these features serve clear, practical purposes. Some believe they were part of a sophisticated astronomical observatory. Others think they were spiritual passageways for the soul. In 2017, using cosmic ray imaging, researchers detected a massive hidden void above the Grand Gallery, about 100 feet long, undocumented and unexplained. What lies inside? So far, no one knows. The deeper we dig, the more the pyramid seems to resist being understood. As though it was never meant to be just a tomb or a monument, but a message. Not to the people of the time, but to those who would come later. To us. So we are left with a riddle written in stone, a monument that shouldn't exist in the way it does. Theories clash, timelines blur, and amid the shifting sands, the truth remains buried, perhaps deliberately. As the desert wind blows softly across its ageless surface, the Great Pyramid of Giza continues to watch, mute and immovable. A sentinel of secrets. Next, we move from the deserts of Egypt to the windswept plains of England, where another ancient mystery stands in cold, quiet defiance of time. Stonehenge. Why was it really built? At dawn, the Salisbury Plain in southern England is veiled in mist. Rolling green hills stretch silently toward the horizon, broken only by one peculiar sight, an arrangement of towering stones, standing in solemn silence. Stonehenge. It is both eerily simple and infinitely complex. From afar, it looks like just a circle of rocks. But as you approach, the sense of purpose, of design, tightens around you. Something important happened here. Something still echoing, long after its builders vanished. This ring of standing stones has stood for over 4,000 years, yet not a single sentence carved in stone, nor a scrap of parchment, has ever told us why it was built. Stonehenge wasn't erected all at once. Its construction spanned centuries, perhaps even over 1,000 years, starting around 3,100 BC. Archaeologists divide its development into three main phases, each adding layers of complexity and mystery. And still, the question remains, what was its true purpose? Was it a temple, an observatory, a burial site, or something far more profound? Let's begin with the stones themselves. There are two main types, the larger sarcens, some weighing over 25 tons, and the smaller but no less enigmatic bluestones, each weighing up to 4 tons. While the sarcens were likely sourced from a site about 20 miles away, the bluestones were dragged, somehow, from over 150 miles west, in the Preseli Hills of Wales. Why go through such monumental effort to move these stones such great distances? Couldn't they have used local materials? And how did they transport them? The technology of the Neolithic era offers no easy answers. Rolling logs? Animal power? Ice roads in winter? Each theory strains under the weight of the task. And yet, the stones are here, locked in precise formations that suggest more than just artistic intent. Most compelling of all is Stonehenge's alignment with the heavens. During the summer solstice, the sun rises in perfect alignment with the heel stone, a massive outlier that seems to signal the beginning of a celestial event. Thousands of modern visitors gather here each June 21st to witness the spectacle. At winter solstice, the sun sets directly opposite. The structure is so precisely aligned that it's hard to believe it was built without astronomical knowledge. This leads many to believe Stonehenge was an ancient observatory, a prehistoric calendar, a clock in stone that marked the passage of time through the heavens. But others see something deeper. Excavations around the site revealed cremated human remains, dating to around 3000 BC, suggesting it was also a burial ground. More than 60 individuals have been discovered, many buried with care and ritual. Some scholars suggest Stonehenge may have been a gateway to the afterlife, with the sun's light guiding souls toward eternity. Still others argue it was a healing site. Legends from the Middle Ages speak of the stones possessing magical powers. And intriguingly, many of the buried individuals showed signs of illness or injury. Did they come to Stonehenge seeking a cure? Did they believe it could heal them? Or could it have been something else entirely? Some researchers point to Stonehenge as a place of unification, a sacred site where different tribes and cultures gathered in peace to share knowledge, honor ancestors, and track the stars. They see in its construction not just an architectural feat, but a social one, a collaboration on a scale that would have required organization, hierarchy, and shared belief. But beyond these theories lies the persistent truth: no one knows for sure. What we're left with is a structure that defies definitive explanation. Its stones are both presence and question, looming enigmas on the green. Their placement speaks of knowledge lost, rituals forgotten, intentions veiled by time. In the modern age, Stonehenge is surrounded by fences, tourists, and souvenir shops. But in its time, it must have felt like stepping into another world. Imagine a torchlit procession approaching the circle under a starlit sky, chants echoing, shadows dancing across monoliths older than memory. Was it built to measure the stars, or to speak to the gods? The truth may never be known. And maybe, just maybe, that's the point. Because some monuments aren't meant to be understood. They're meant to be witnessed. As we leave behind the windswept fields of Britain, our journey carries us far across the Atlantic, to the dry highlands of Peru, where strange lines are carved into the earth so large they can only be seen from the sky. The Nazca Lines. What was the purpose of these giant geoglyphs? High above the arid plains of southern Peru, something peculiar emerges from the rust-colored earth. From the ground, you see only dust and cracked soil. But from the sky, a revelation: colossal drawings carved into the desert floor. Straight lines stretching for miles, spirals, trapezoids, and unmistakable shapes. A monkey, a hummingbird, a spider, a human-like figure waving from a hillside. These are the Nazca Lines, an ancient riddle etched into the earth, so vast that their true form was only revealed when humans took flight. Created by the Nazca culture between 500 BC and 500 CE, the lines cover an area of over 500 square kilometers. Some stretch for several kilometers, others form figures that span hundreds of feet. But the most baffling detail is this: they were made simply, by removing the top layer of dark, oxidized stones to reveal the lighter soil beneath. No machines. No tools we'd consider advanced. Just patience, precision, and an unfathomable vision. And yet they've survived over 1,000 years, unspoiled by time or weather. The dry, windless desert preserved them like a museum frozen in eternity. But the biggest mystery isn't how they were made. It's why. What would compel a people without flight, without aircraft, drones, or satellites, to create art only visible from the sky? Some suggest the lines were astronomical markers, calendars drawn on the earth to track the solstices and celestial events. Certain lines do align with the sun during solstice, lending weight to the theory. Perhaps the figures represented constellations, an earthly reflection of the heavens. Others believe the lines served ritualistic purposes. According to archaeologist Maria Reich, who devoted her life to studying them, the Nazca Lines may have been part of ceremonies to invoke rain, a precious and rare gift in the desert. The spiral and trapezoid shapes, in this view, may symbolize water paths or irrigation systems. And then, there's the more speculative realm. Some claim the lines were built as landing strips for ancient astronauts, pointing to the long, flat runways that resemble modern airstrips. Erich von Daniken's theory of extraterrestrial contact made this idea popular, though widely rejected by scholars. Still, even skeptics admit, the scale and aerial visibility of the lines seem beyond the needs or abilities of a desert culture. Unless they knew something we didn't. Other researchers propose a more grounded, but no less fascinating idea, that the lines were pilgrimage routes. People may have walked the paths during spiritual rituals, step by step, offering prayers, carrying offerings, tracing symbolic journeys from life to death, earth to sky. Indeed, evidence of ceremonial artifacts, broken pottery, wooden stakes used to map the lines, suggests that people interacted physically with the geoglyphs, not merely gazed upon them. Yet, no theory explains everything. Why a spider? Why a monkey? animals not native to the local desert. Why so many lines that intersect and stretch without forming figures at all? Why the human-shaped figure, with its large, circular eyes, raising a hand as if signaling to someone, or something? Some believe the figures represented mythical beings or ancestral spirits. Others think the Nazca were trying to speak to the gods above, sending messages skyward in the only way they could. Not with words, but with symbols carved into the bones of the earth. What is known is that creating the Nazca Lines required planning, collaboration, and belief, a shared cultural effort sustained over generations. These weren't random doodles. They were purposeful. Sacred. But sacred to whom, and for what purpose? Today, satellites can capture every line and curve in crystal clarity. Yet even in the age of digital mapping and AI analysis, we still don't fully grasp the minds behind these desert glyphs. They remain a mystery best viewed not just from above, but from within. A mystery that dares us to ask not only what the lines meant, but why the silence around them is so complete. As we fly above them in planes, helicopters, or Google Earth, one thing becomes clear. The Nazca were speaking to the sky. Now we leave the deserts of Peru behind and journey east, across continents and millennia, to a forgotten hilltop in modern-day Turkey, where buried pillars older than the pyramids whisper of worship long before writing. Gobekley Temple. Was this the world's first temple? Hidden beneath a dusty hilltop in southeastern Turkey, an ancient secret slept for thousands of years. Locals had always known the mound was there, calling it Potbelly Hill, Göbekli Tepe in Turkish, but no one suspected what lay beneath. That changed in the mid-1990s, when German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt began to dig. What he uncovered would shake the foundations of archaeology. Emerging from the soil were massive T-shaped stone pillars, some over 16 feet tall and weighing up to 20 tons. Many were intricately carved with images: foxes, lions, scorpions, snakes, vultures, a menagerie frozen in stone. These weren't crude efforts. They were deliberate, precise, symbolic. And they were old. Radiocarbon dating placed the earliest parts of Göbekli Tepe at around 9,600 BC, over 11,000 years ago. That's 7,000 years before the pyramids. 6,000 years before Stonehenge. Before writing, before wheels, before pottery. Before civilization as we know it. The very existence of Göbekli Tepe overturned a long-held belief that large-scale, organized religion and monumental architecture only came after the invention of agriculture and settled societies. But Göbekli Tepe suggests the opposite. Could it be that the impulse to worship, to gather around shared spiritual beliefs, came first, and that agriculture developed as a means to support that need? Suddenly, the story of human civilization seemed to tilt. The site itself consists of multiple circular enclosures, each ringed with massive standing stones, with two larger pillars dominating the center like sentinels. These central stones are anthropomorphic, resembling stylized human forms with folded hands and belts, possibly representing gods, spirits, or revered ancestors. The level of coordination and effort to carve, transport, and erect these stones suggests a society capable of complex planning, long before permanent towns or farms existed. But who were these people? No homes, burial sites, or clear signs of permanent settlement have been found at Göbekli Tepe. Its builders were likely hunter-gatherers, nomadic groups who returned seasonally to construct, maintain, and worship at this mysterious complex. Yet for a people without metal tools, pack animals, or writing, how did they organize such an undertaking? What beliefs drove them to move mountains of stone? What rituals were performed among these silent sentinels? We don't know. There are no written records, no surviving oral histories, no clear signs of a single purpose. Some suggest it was a temple to the dead, a place where the living communicated with the spirits of ancestors. Others believe it was a center of astronomical observation, aligned with constellations that held mythic significance. The carvings of dangerous animals and birds of prey may point to a world full of spiritual meaning, one where animals were messengers, guardians, or even deities. Then there's a more speculative theory, that Göbekli Tepe wasn't built to worship gods, it was built to create them. That in gathering to honor the unknown, humanity began to imagine the divine. The carvings may not depict real animals, but symbolic forces, birthed from dreams, visions, and fear of the natural world. Strangely, after centuries of use, the site was intentionally buried. The enclosures were filled in with rubble and soil, preserved almost perfectly for modern archaeologists. But why? Were the rituals abandoned? Was the place considered too sacred, or too dangerous, to leave exposed? Or did the builders simply move on, leaving behind their stone prayers as a memory? Whatever the reason, the burial ensured that Göbekli Tepe was waiting for us, perfectly intact, a time capsule from humanity's forgotten dawn. And it forces us to reconsider the question: did we invent gods after civilization? Or did the need to believe create civilization itself? As the sun sets over Turkey's hills, casting long shadows across those ancient pillars, we continue our journey, farther back, deeper still, into one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in all of ancient literature. The Samrian king list. Were these rulers real, or something else? In a quiet museum in Istanbul, surrounded by weathered clay tablets and worn stone fragments, there sits a cuneiform inscription unlike any other. It's not a myth, not a fable, not a creation story. It is a list. A list of kings. Their names, their cities, and the length of their reigns, carved with chilling precision. It is known as the Samrian king list, and it begins like this. After kingship descended from heaven, kingship was in Eridu. What follows is a catalogue of rulers spanning thousands of years, some ruling for hundreds, even tens of thousands of years. One king, Al-Ulam, is said to have reigned for 28,800 years. Another, Enmenluana, ruled for 43,200 years. These aren't poetic exaggerations or metaphors. The numbers are detailed, orderly, written in the same cuneiform script used for trade records and tax accounts. This wasn't a myth. It was a document, part of the administrative and historical record of ancient Mesopotamia. But how can this be? Could the Sumerians, the world's first known civilization, have truly believed their early kings reigned for millennia? Mainstream scholars believe the exaggerated reigns represent symbolic numbers, reflecting divine favor or mythic grandeur. Over time, as records became more reliable, reign lengths become more realistic. Later kings are listed with durations that align with historical evidence, decades, not epochs. And yet, the list doesn't read like mythology. It reads like history, just a strange and broken version of it. Even stranger, some of the cities mentioned, Eridu, Bad Tibara, Shurapak, were once thought to be fictional, until archaeologists found their ruins buried in the sands of modern-day Iraq. The line between fact and myth blurred, and the king list refused to give up its secrets. Then comes the flood. In the middle of the king list is a haunting phrase. Then the flood swept over. The list resumes after that, with shorter reigns and recognizable rulers. It mirrors the structure of Genesis or the Epic of Gilgamesh, a great deluge dividing the ancient world from the modern one. Did this flood actually happen? Was it a real event passed down through memory and turned to myth? And who were these kings before the flood? Were they human rulers whose years were exaggerated for effect? Or does the list preserve something older, something that once walked among men but was later dismissed as impossible? Some fringe theorists suggest the antediluvian kings were not human at all, that the long lifespans and sudden appearance of kingship from heaven point to beings of another kind. Ancient astronauts, lost civilizations, survivors from a forgotten age. It's a tempting idea, but the evidence is fragile, carved into stone, translated through time, and filtered through the limits of our understanding. And then there's the unsettling fact that multiple civilizations, from the Sumerians to the Egyptians, the Hindus to the Hebrews, share similar themes: gods descending from the sky, kings with supernatural lifespans, and a great flood that resets the world. Coincidence? Or remnants of a single story, told in different tongues? Even modern scholars struggle to categorize the king list. It's not mythology. It's not pure fact. It's something in between, a strange document from the edge of recorded time, a whisper from a world half remembered. And it raises a question we're not equipped to answer. If something did come before history, would we even recognize it when we saw it? Now we turn our gaze from ancient kings to a technological enigma fished from the bottom of the sea, a machine that shouldn't exist, built thousands of years too early. The Antikythera mechanism. Did the ancients build a computer? In 1901, off the rocky coast of the Greek island Antikythera, a group of sponge divers stumbled upon the wreckage of an ancient Roman cargo ship. Amidst bronze statues and broken amphorae, one object lay encrusted in rust, stone, and time, unremarkable at first glance. A corroded lump of metal, fragmented and forgotten. But hidden within that decay was something impossible. When archaeologists examined it closely, they found a complex arrangement of gears, dials, and inscriptions, the shattered remains of a device so advanced, it would force historians to rewrite the boundaries of ancient technology. It came to be known as the Antikythera mechanism, and it was 2,000 years old. Dating to around 100 BC, the mechanism was composed of dozens of precisely cut bronze gears nested within a wooden casing. As researchers began reconstructing it, using X-rays, 3D scans, and years of meticulous study, a stunning truth emerged. This ancient machine was capable of predicting celestial events, eclipses, moon phases, planetary motions, even the timing of the Olympic Games. With nothing but gears and inscriptions, it modeled the motion of the sun, moon, and known planets with astonishing accuracy. In short, the Antikythera mechanism wasn't just an artifact. It was a mechanical computer, the first known of its kind. Nothing like it would appear again for more than 1,000 years. That fact alone is unsettling. How could Greek craftsmen from the 2nd century BC build such a device, and then lose the knowledge completely? Why does no other example survive from the Roman or medieval world? Where are the prototypes? The diagrams? The legacy? It's as if it appeared from nowhere, fully formed, ahead of its time, and then vanished again without a trace. Some scholars believe it wasn't a one-of-a-kind machine, but part of a now-lost tradition of scientific craftsmanship. They point to ancient texts by Cicero and others, which mention devices that could track the heavens mechanically. But even these vague references don't explain the level of sophistication packed into the Antikythera's compact frame. Its builders knew not only astronomy, but also gear ratios, differential motion, metallurgy, and miniaturization. Skills not typically associated with the ancient world. The mechanism's inscriptions, in Koine Greek, suggest it was made by scholars connected to the school of Archimedes or Hipparchus, perhaps in Rhodes or Alexandria. But this is speculation. No maker's name was inscribed. No workshop identified. No explanation left behind. Just the machine. And it raises uncomfortable questions. What other knowledge did the ancients possess, and lose? Was the Antikythera mechanism an isolated masterpiece, the final echo of a dying technological lineage? Or a glimpse into a hidden chapter of human capability, one erased by war, conquest, or catastrophe? The shipwreck that carried it may have sunk in a storm. But what storm swept away the very civilization that made it? In 2022, researchers announced new breakthroughs, uncovering additional gears and reconstructing the full lunar cycle model embedded within the device. With every new revelation, the awe only deepens. This wasn't primitive guesswork. It was mechanical elegance, knowledge encoded in wheels and teeth. Today, the Antikythera mechanism sits in the National Archaeological Museum of Athens, behind glass, under soft lights. Most visitors pass it quickly, unaware that they're standing in front of a machine that shouldn't exist. A relic from a timeline that's almost ours, but not quite. Now we leave behind gears and bronze, and turn toward whispers of divinity. Deep in northern Italy, there lies a cloth bearing the faint imprint of a man, a face etched in blood and mystery. The Shroud of Turin, a holy relic or a masterful hoax. In a quiet cathedral in northern Italy, shielded by bulletproof glass and kept under strict climate control, lies a relic that has stirred faith and doubt in equal measure for centuries. It is not encrusted with jewels, nor forged of gold or bronze. It is simple, a long piece of linen, yellowed with age, creased by centuries of reverent folding and unfolding. Yet on this cloth is something no one can fully explain. Faint but unmistakable is the image of a man. A human form, front and back, stretched along the fabric as if gently imprinted. He appears to have been crucified. Blood seems to flow from wounds in his wrists and feet. His ribs are gashed open. His brow marked by punctures. The pose is lifeless, but the expression is hauntingly calm. This is the Shroud of Turin, and it may be the most analyzed, contested, and mysterious artifact in all of religious history. Many believe it is the actual burial cloth of Jesus of Nazareth, the linen that wrapped his broken body after the crucifixion, and which somehow, at the moment of resurrection, captured a divine imprint. Others dismiss it as a medieval forgery, an extraordinary creation meant to deceive or inspire belief at a time when relics were currency and faith was spectacle. But one thing remains undisputed: the image exists, and no one has ever fully explained how. Let's begin not with belief, but with what is physically there. The cloth measures approximately 14 feet by 3.5 feet. It is woven in a distinctive herringbone pattern, consistent with weaving techniques known from the 1st century. There are no pigments, dyes, or paints on the enamelmost fibers of the linen, as though the image were scorched lightly, but not burned. And remarkably, it is a negative image, one that becomes clearer when viewed in photographic negative, a feature discovered only in 1898. That discovery changed everything. When Italian photographer Secondo Pia developed his glass plate negative, he nearly dropped it in shock. What appeared faint and ghost-like on the cloth suddenly sprang into clarity. The photographic negative revealed a positive image, detailed, dimensional, eerily lifelike. The shroud had somehow encoded a photographic property centuries before photography existed. From that moment, it was no longer a relic of quiet reverence. It was a mystery. In 1988, the Vatican authorized carbon dating of a portion of the cloth. 3 laboratories, in Oxford, Zurich, and Arizona, tested a small sample and returned a date range of 1260 to 1390 CE. The conclusion: the shroud was medieval. A hoax. A relic created during a time when churches across Europe competed for holy artifacts, and when belief was often shaped more by symbols than by facts. But not everyone accepted the result. Critics pointed out that the sample used for testing may have been taken from an area repaired after a fire in 1532, a section woven with newer threads that would skew the result. Later textile analysis seemed to confirm this. Others noted that contamination from centuries of handling, exposure to smoke, oils, and humidity could have altered the carbon content. In short, the test may have dated a patch, not the original linen. And so the mystery deepened. Further investigations revealed pollen grains embedded in the fibers, from plants native to Jerusalem, consistent with a burial cloth from the Middle East. Microscopic analysis found limestone dust on the fabric, chemically similar to limestone found near tombs in Jerusalem. But the most baffling feature remains the image itself. Modern science has tried to reproduce it. Artists have used heat, acid paint, light, even lasers, but no one has fully replicated the subtle, superficial coloration of the fibers or the anatomical accuracy of the image. The shroud displays a level of detail in muscle tone, blood flow, and post-mortem positioning that some believe would require medical knowledge centuries ahead of its time. The bloodstains, if they are blood, align with classical Roman crucifixion wounds. The flow patterns appear consistent with a man who was beaten, scourged, crowned with thorns, and pierced in the side. The presence of both front and back imprints suggests the cloth wrapped the body and somehow recorded the shape without distortion. But the image is not blurry, nor distorted. It is proportional. Some even claim it contains three-dimensional data, information about depth and form encoded in the brightness of the image, which modern imaging tools like VP8 analyzers have interpreted as topographical structure. How could a medieval forger have achieved this? And why would they have made the image barely visible, only to be fully appreciated 600 years later, through a photographic process that hadn't yet been invented? There are no answers. Only theories. Some believe the image was formed by a burst of energy, radiant heat, light, or something unknown, at the moment of resurrection. Others suggest it was created through natural chemical reactions, a combination of body heat, evaporation, and environmental factors. But no experiment has ever replicated the image with the same properties. Which brings us back to the question: is the Shroud of Turin authentic? If it is perhaps the most sacred physical object in Christianity, a silent witness to crucifixion and resurrection. If it is not, it remains one of the most elaborate, masterful, and perplexing hoaxes in human history, created with techniques we cannot yet fully explain. It stands at the crossroads of faith and forensics, where the sacred meets the scientific, and both come away with more questions than answers. And that may be its truest power. For whether you kneel before it or analyze it under a microscope, the shroud does what few objects can: it compels you to look deeper. Not just at the cloth, but at the line between belief and knowledge, history and mystery. Now we turn away from linen and light, and towards something far heavier: great stone blocks scattered across the highlands of Bolivia. Carved with precision that seems beyond the tools of their time, they lie silent beneath the open sky. Puma Punku, how were these megaliths cut so perfectly? High in the Bolivian Andes, where thin air meets open sky, lies a shattered stone complex that seems to defy everything we think we know about ancient engineering. Scattered across a vast plateau, colossal blocks of stone sit broken and displaced, as if some unimaginable force had once lifted and then dropped them like toys. This is Puma Punku, a megalithic site so precise, so carefully constructed, that even with today's technology, we would struggle to recreate it. Located near the more famous Tiwanaku ruins, Puma Punku may not look impressive at first glance. There are no towering pyramids or ornate carvings like those found in Egypt or Greece. But as you get closer and examine the details hidden within the rubble, it becomes clear: this is not the work of simple tools and guesswork. It is something far more advanced. Let's begin with the stones. Some of the megaliths at Puma Punku weigh more than 100 tons. These aren't soft sandstone either. Many are made of diorite, one of the hardest types of stone on Earth. The only material harder is diamond. And yet the surfaces of these blocks are mirror smooth, the edges razor sharp, and the cuts laser straight. Most striking of all are the H-shaped blocks, part of an interlocking design that suggests modular construction. These blocks are cut with perfect 90-degree angles, evenly spaced grooves, precise drill holes, and inner corners that are nearly impossible to replicate by hand, not just symmetrical, but identical, down to millimeter-level tolerances. Archaeologists believe the site was built by the Tiwanaku culture around 500 to 700 CE. But there's a problem. The Tiwanaku were not known to have written language, metal tools capable of cutting diorite, or any machinery that could lift and transport such massive stones. So how did they do it? Mainstream explanations include the use of stone tools, rope, ramps, and a high degree of craftsmanship. But none of these fully account for the sheer precision or scale. Some of the stones were quarried from locations up to 50 miles away, across rivers and rugged terrain. Others appear to have been carved and placed so precisely that no mortar was needed to hold them in place. To achieve this level of accuracy today, we would use computer modeling, diamond-tip saws, and hydraulic cranes. And yet the people of Puma Punku, with no wheel, no writing, and no known advanced tools, did it over 1,000 years ago. Some researchers believe the site may be even older than the Tiwanaku. They argue that the technology visible in the stones suggests a much earlier, and perhaps unknown, civilization, one that passed down its techniques or was later absorbed by the Tiwanaku. Others claim the site was once a port, and that rising or falling water levels buried and fractured the ruins over time. Then there are the more speculative theories. Ancient astronaut theorists have long pointed to Puma Punku as possible evidence of extraterrestrial influence. The idea that such precision and megalithic engineering is simply beyond what ancient humans could accomplish alone. While this is not accepted by mainstream science, it reflects a central truth. The site doesn't fit neatly into history. Even the purpose of Puma Punku is unclear. Some believe it was a religious center, others say it was an astronomical observatory. Still others suggest it was a gateway. The name Puma Punku means door of the Puma, and many of the stone structures resemble platforms or entrances, possibly symbolic or ceremonial. But no structure remains standing. The entire complex has been torn apart, not just by time, but seemingly by some cataclysmic force. Massive stones lie cracked and toppled, as if shattered from within or scattered by an earthquake. Was it a natural disaster? A deliberate act of destruction? Or something else entirely? The damage is real. The methods are unknown. The precision is undeniable. And so we are left with the stones, their corners still sharp, their grooves still clean, silently waiting in the high Andean air. No inscriptions. No records. No explanation. Just ruins that seem to speak in a language we no longer understand. Because Puma Punku isn't just a place. It's a problem, one that doesn't go away no matter how many times you measure the stones, or redraw the timeline. It stands as a monument to something lost. A moment in human history, or perhaps prehistory, where someone, somehow, knew more than we think they should have. And now we journey eastward, deep into the ancient world of Mesopotamia, where stories of kings, temples, and gods blend with whispers of forbidden knowledge. In the heart of the ruins once stood a device that may have been far more than ceremonial. It may have been electrical. The Baghdad Battery. Did the ancients discover electricity? In 1938, nestled in the dusty storerooms of the Iraqi Museum in Baghdad, a curious object caught the attention of German archaeologist Wilhelm Koenig. It wasn't ornate or visually impressive. Just a small clay jar, about 5 inches tall, sealed with asphalt, and containing a corroded iron rod suspended inside a copper cylinder. At first, it seemed like a simple container. But as Koenig examined it more closely, he came to a startling conclusion. This might be a battery. The artifact, now known as the Baghdad Battery, was dated to around 250 BC, during the Parthian period, more than 2,000 years ago. If Koenig was correct, this humble-looking device could represent a lost knowledge far ahead of its time, the discovery of electricity in the ancient world. Let's take a closer look. The jar consists of three main parts: a terracotta vessel, a copper tube, and an iron rod. The components show signs of corrosion, the kind you'd expect from a mild acid reaction. When sealed and filled with an acidic liquid, such as vinegar or lemon juice, modern reconstructions have shown the device can produce a small electric charge, typically around 0.5 to 1 volt. Enough to give a tingle. Enough to electroplate a thin layer of metal. Enough, perhaps, to make us rethink everything we assumed about ancient technology. But what was it used for? That's where the mystery deepens. No documentation exists. No inscriptions. No records of its creation, purpose, or function. Mainstream archaeologists are skeptical, suggesting that the jar might have been used for storage, perhaps of sacred scrolls or ritual materials. But if that were the case, why the use of multiple, specific materials, iron, copper, and a sealant, all arranged in a design remarkably similar to modern batteries? Some researchers believe the Baghdad Battery was used for electroplating, the process of depositing a thin layer of gold or silver onto another metal. The ancient world was filled with objects of surprising metallic craftsmanship, and this technique could explain how some artifacts appeared far more valuable than they actually were. Others go further. They speculate that the batteries may have been used in religious ceremonies, to create a sensation of divine power, perhaps a mild shock during a ritual, or a hidden effect designed to all believers. In the hands of a high priest, even a flicker of static could have seemed like the touch of the gods. More radical theories propose that the Baghdad Battery wasn't unique. That it may have been part of a larger system, now lost, of proto-electrical technology developed and then forgotten. Similar devices have been claimed in other locations, though none as well known or widely studied as the original. So why didn't this knowledge survive? That question haunts many ancient technologies. A war, an invasion, a shift in power, sometimes that's all it takes for innovation to vanish. If the Baghdad Battery truly was electrical, its loss may have been an accident of history, a victim of disinterest, secrecy, or destruction. But then there's the other possibility. The one that's harder to shake. What if it didn't disappear, but was hidden? If a group in the ancient world stumbled upon electrical energy, even on a small scale, would they have shared it widely? Or would they have guarded it as a sacred secret, a source of authority wrapped in ritual? Could there be more of these devices buried beneath temples, sealed inside tombs, mistaken for ordinary containers, passed over by museums? And if so, what else might they reveal? Despite years of research, no definitive conclusion has been reached. The Baghdad Battery remains in limbo, not fully accepted, not completely dismissed. It challenges the clean narrative of human progress, inserting a disruptive possibility into a neatly ordered timeline. Because the story we tell ourselves is that technology evolves in a straight line, from fire to the wheel to engines and electricity. But the Baghdad Battery suggests that maybe, just maybe, the line isn't straight at all. Maybe it loops back. Maybe we've lost more than we've kept. And maybe, in the ruins of ancient cities and forgotten tombs, some flicker of that lost knowledge is still waiting to be uncovered. Now, we journey to another kind of riddle, not a device or a structure, but a book. A book no one can read. A manuscript filled with strange drawings, unknown plants, and a language no one has ever spoken. The Voinich Manuscript, a language no one can decipher. Tucked away in the rare books vault of Yale University's Beinecke Library is a manuscript unlike any other. Its pages are filled with curling script, looping lines, and strange, spidery glyphs that resemble writing, but belong to no known alphabet. Surrounding the text are illustrations, bizarre plants that do not exist in any known botany, celestial diagrams that defy logic, and naked women bathing in systems of tubes that look half organic, half mechanical. It is called the Voinich Manuscript, and it may be the most unreadable book ever written. No one knows who wrote it. No one knows what it says. No one, in over 600 years, has been able to decipher a single word. Let's begin with what we do know. The book consists of 240 vellum pages, though many more are believed to be missing. Its parchment has been carbon dated to the early 15th century, somewhere between 1404 and 1438. The ink and paint also appear consistent with that time period. But beyond this, the manuscript steps into the shadows. Its script flows with the ease of practiced handwriting. It doesn't appear random. It has repetition, grammar-like structure, even syntax. It's not gibberish. It's a language, or appears to be, but no language that exists today, or perhaps ever. For centuries, cryptographers, linguists, and code breakers have tried to crack it. During World War II, some of the most talented minds in Allied code breaking took a turn at the manuscript, but walked away baffled. More recently, computer scientists and AI researchers have analyzed its structure, looking for patterns or encryption schemes. Still, the content remains completely opaque. So what is the Voinich Manuscript? A cipher? A hoax? A forgotten language? There are theories. One of the oldest suggests it was an elaborate medieval code book, possibly created to conceal dangerous or sacred knowledge. Herbal medicines, alchemical secrets, or magical incantations, hidden from the eyes of the church or rival scholars. This theory is supported by the many plant diagrams and apothecary-style pages within the book, but falls apart when no one can match the plants to any real species. Another theory proposes it was a pharmaceutical manual, created by a long-lost culture or sect. The text, in this interpretation, could be a combination of coded prescriptions, symbolic drawings, and metaphysical ideas, like the kind seen in ancient Chinese or Ayurvedic medicine. But again, the symbols and script resist translation. Others believe the manuscript is an example of glossolalia, written gibberish produced under trance or spiritual influence. In this view, the author may have believed they were channeling a divine or otherworldly language. The drawings, with their surreal and sometimes disturbing imagery, lend a certain credence to this idea. Then there's the possibility of a hoax, that the entire manuscript was a sophisticated fake, crafted to mystify or defraud a patron. But this theory has problems of its own. Why would someone go to such extreme lengths to create a consistent, linguistically structured text with such strange, but disciplined, artwork, and then never capitalize on it? The manuscript is so internally consistent that many linguists believe it had to mean something to its creator. And that brings us to the man who brought it to light. The manuscript is named after Wilfrid Voynich, a Polish book dealer who acquired it in 1912 from an Italian Jesuit college. He immediately recognized its strangeness and sent copies to experts across Europe, hoping someone could unlock its secrets. None could. But the manuscript's trail goes back further. In the 17th century, it passed through the hands of Athanasius Kircher, a Jesuit polymath obsessed with deciphering Egyptian hieroglyphs. He never solved it either. Before that, the book seems to vanish into history, its origin unknown. As the mystery deepened, the manuscript gained a kind of cult status. It became the holy grail of code-breaking, the Everest of linguistic puzzles. To read it would be to uncover something no one else had, perhaps not just a lost language, but a lost world. In recent years, some breakthroughs have been claimed. One study suggested the language might be a variant of Hebrew with coded vowels. Another proposed it was written in an extinct Romance language. A few AI models have even claimed partial translations. But none of these have stood up to scrutiny. The code, if it is a code, still holds. And so the Voinich Manuscript sits quietly behind glass, open to a random page, as if daring the next visitor to try. Its plants still sprout in impossible directions. Its stars still orbit nothing. Its script, beautiful and infuriating, still speaks in a voice no one can hear. In a world drowning in information, here is a book that refuses to be known. Perhaps that is its truest power. Because long after it was written, the Voinich Manuscript continues to do what it was always meant to do. Make us wonder. Now we travel from the silent script of a mysterious book to an ancient scroll made of metal, one that lists treasures hidden across a ruined land, treasures no one has ever found. The Copper Scroll, a treasure map to nowhere. In 1952, within the arid cliffs of Qumran near the Dead Sea, archaeologists stumbled upon a cave that would become famous for one of the most puzzling document discoveries of all time: the Dead Sea Scrolls. Hidden inside ceramic jars, these ancient Hebrew texts revealed early Jewish scriptures, prayers, and commentaries. But among the delicate parchments and fragments of papyrus, there was one scroll that didn't belong. It wasn't made of parchment. It wasn't written in ink. It was hammered into pure copper. This artifact, now known as the Copper Scroll, was unlike anything else found among the Dead Sea Scrolls. While the others contained religious writings, this one read like a treasure map. A literal list of 64 locations, each describing a hoard of buried gold, silver, and sacred items, stored in jars, hidden under specific landmarks, behind walls, beneath cisterns, or at the base of ancient ruins. The total amount described? Over 4,600 talents of precious metal. That's more than 160 tons of gold and silver, a fortune beyond imagining. But none of it has ever been found. Let's look more closely. The Copper Scroll is made of 2 rolled sheets of copper, which were so brittle after centuries in a dry cave that scholars had to cut them into sections to read the text. Etched in a Hebrew script that mixes formal and informal styles, the scroll reads like an inventory log, yet with one critical difference: it offers no context. No names. No date. No explanation for why these treasures were hidden, who they belonged to, or what they were meant for. Only line after line of instructions. One entry reads, "In the ruin that is in the valley of Acre, under the steps leading to the east, 40 talents of silver are hidden." Another, "In the tomb of the 3rd section of stones, a vessel of incense and a scroll." Simple. Precise. Yet maddeningly incomplete. Was this a real inventory, or a ritual document? A literal treasure map, or a symbolic list? Mainstream scholars are divided. Some believe the treasure was real, possibly connected to the Second Temple in Jerusalem. When the Romans sacked the city in 70 CE, it's thought that Jewish priests or rebels may have hidden sacred objects and wealth from the temple to keep them from being seized or desecrated. The Copper Scroll, in this theory, is a record of these emergency caches, intended to be recovered one day by the faithful. Others argue the scroll is too vague to be practical. Many of the landmarks it refers to, the cistern under the twin cedars, the reservoir near the pillar, no longer exist, or were never documented at all. It reads more like an internal record, meant for someone who already knew the locations by heart. And some researchers go further, suggesting the scroll was never meant to lead anyone to anything. That it was symbolic, perhaps part of a messianic prophecy or a coded guide for a ritual, not a treasure hunt, but a spiritual message wrapped in the language of gold and silver. But even that theory has problems, because the amount of wealth listed is enormous, far beyond what any single group might have had access to, unless it came from the temple treasury itself, or from years of tithes and sacred offerings. Then there's the mystery of its material. Why was this scroll, and only this one, written on copper? Was it because the information was too valuable to risk on parchment? Was it meant to last until a prophesied return? Or was it part of a secret known only to a few, hidden in metal, placed in a cave, and forgotten? Attempts have been made to locate the treasure. From the 1960s onward, archaeologists and adventurers alike have combed the ruins around Qumran, Jerusalem, and the Jordan Valley. But nothing has ever been recovered, not a coin, not a vessel, not a trace. And so the copper scroll remains what it has always been, a list without an answer. A document that should lead somewhere, but leads nowhere. A map that names real places, but yields no path. Or maybe it's waiting for the right eyes. For someone who sees what others have missed. For someone who already knows where to dig. From metal to crystal, from treasure to skulls, our next mystery takes us deep into the jungles of Central America, where ancient legends speak of gleaming artifacts shaped like human heads, and powers no one can explain. The crystal skulls, ancient artifacts or modern illusions. In the heart of Central America, among the ruins of vanished empires and the echoes of forgotten rituals, legends speak of objects so strange, so perfect, that they seem to defy both time and explanation. They are shaped like human skulls, carved from solid quartz crystal, smooth, flawless, and eerily lifelike. These are the crystal skulls, a group of mysterious artifacts said to originate from ancient Mesoamerican civilizations, yet surrounded by doubt, controversy, and whispers of power far beyond our understanding. They first emerged in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, often appearing in the hands of collectors, explorers, or black market dealers. No two skulls are exactly alike, but many share the same uncanny properties. Made of clear or milky quartz, carved with anatomical precision, and polished to a mirror finish without visible tool marks. The most famous of these is the so-called Mitchell Hedges skull, allegedly discovered in the 1920s by British adventurer F.A. Mitchell Hedges during an excavation of a ruined Mayan city in Belize. The story goes like this. While exploring the site of Lebanton, Mitchell Hedges' adopted daughter, Anna, spotted something glinting beneath the collapsed stones. It was the upper half of a crystal skull. A few months later, they returned to the site and recovered the jawbone, perfectly articulated and able to open and close like a real skull. The find made headlines. Weighing around 11 pounds, carved from a single piece of clear quartz, and anatomically accurate in size and proportion, the Mitchell Hedges skull seemed too perfect to be real. According to its owner, it was thousands of years old, used in ancient rituals, and imbued with powers, visions, strange noises, changes in temperature, even the ability to influence thought. But was any of it true? Skeptics quickly pointed out the lack of documentation. No field notes. No photographs of the discovery. No mention of the skull in early records of the excavation. Years later, it was revealed that Mitchell Hedges had actually purchased the skull at auction in 1943, casting serious doubt on the origin story. And yet, the skull remained impossible. Scientific examination raised more questions than answers. When researchers at Hewlett-Packard examined the skull in the 1970s, they discovered it had been carved against the natural axis of the quartz crystal, a process that should have caused the crystal to shatter. Furthermore, They found no signs of modern machine tooling, leading some to believe the artifact must have been hand-carved over hundreds of years, using only sand and water. But later, more refined studies contradicted this. Using electron microscopes, experts from the British Museum and the Smithsonian identified microscopic rotary tool marks on several crystal skulls, signs of 19th century or early 20th century carving methods. They concluded that the skulls were likely European creations, possibly originating from Germany, where advanced quartz carving techniques were already in use during that period. So, were the crystal skulls genuine artifacts from ancient Mesoamerica? Or elaborate fakes, crafted in the age of imperial exploration and sold to eager collectors seeking a tangible link to ancient mystery? No definitive answer has emerged. And yet, the skulls persist, not just as objects, but as symbols. In Mayan legend, there are whispers of 13 crystal skulls, each holding secrets of the cosmos. When united, the legend says they will reveal knowledge to prevent a great catastrophe, or herald a new era of human understanding. This idea, though modern in form, echoes deep cultural themes: skulls as gateways to the afterlife, as vessels of memory, as tools for prophecy. The ancient Maya, Aztec, and Mixtec cultures all used skull imagery extensively, in rituals, carvings, and art. Some real skulls were overlaid with turquoise and gold. Others were turned into masks or drinking vessels. Death was not the end, it was part of a cycle, a transition, a key to something beyond. Could the crystal skulls be symbolic continuations of that worldview? Sacred replicas crafted to hold power, not merely display it? Or is their mystique simply the product of modern myth-making, a blend of colonial romance, marketing, and spiritual yearning? Even today, the skulls appear in books, documentaries, and pop culture. They've been linked to Atlantis, aliens, and secret knowledge. Some claim the quartz holds energetic frequencies, that the skulls can record information like ancient computers. Others see them as nothing more than elaborate glasswork, impressive, but mundane. Yet the feeling they evoke remains real. Stand in front of one, gaze into the hollow eyes carved from a stone older than civilization, and a sense of stillness takes hold. Whether ancient relics or clever forgeries, the crystal skulls have achieved something rare. They make us stop, and question, and feel the presence of a mystery we cannot name. And maybe that's the point. We now leave behind polished quartz and step onto a windswept island in the North Atlantic. There, beneath centuries of legend and layers of soil, lies a pit so deep, so complex, and so maddening in its design that treasure hunters have chased its secrets for over 200 years, and found nothing. The Oak Island Money Pit, a treasure hunt with no end. Just off the coast of Nova Scotia, Canada, lies a quiet, wooded island barely 140 acres wide. From a distance, it looks like any other spot along the Atlantic shoreline: wind-bent trees, rocky beaches, and gentle tides. But for over 2 centuries, Oak Island has been home to one of the most obsessive and costly treasure hunts in history. It all began in 1795, when a teenage boy named Daniel McGinnis rowed across the water to explore the island. While walking through the trees, he noticed a shallow depression in the ground near an old oak tree. Suspended above it, according to legend, was a block and tackle, a kind of primitive pulley. Curious, McGinnis returned with 2 friends, and they began to dig. What they found seemed to confirm the mystery. 10 feet down, they struck a layer of flagstones. At 20 feet, a platform of oak logs. Then another at 30 feet. With each 10-foot interval, the boys hit another log platform, suggesting deliberate construction, a kind of shaft built to hide something deep underground. They stopped at 30 feet, but the rumor had already spread: there was treasure on Oak Island. Since then, for over 200 years, hundreds of excavators, engineers, and treasure hunters, including future U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt, have come to Oak Island, lured by the promise of gold, religious relics, lost manuscripts, or ancient secrets. What they found instead was a trap. The original shaft, now called the Money Pit, has collapsed multiple times. Every time excavators got near the 90-foot mark, the pit would flood instantly and violently, filling with seawater through what appeared to be artificially constructed flood tunnels, cleverly engineered to defeat any who dared go too deep. Over the years, strange artifacts have been recovered. At 90 feet, a stone inscribed with symbols was reportedly found, later translated to read, 40 feet below, 2 million pounds are buried. That stone has since gone missing. Drill samples have recovered fragments of gold chain, parchment with ink, and fibers believed to be coconut husk, material not native to Nova Scotia but used in the 1700s for ship cargo and filtration. Other digs have turned up an iron cross, bone fragments, and Spanish coins. All tantalizing. None conclusive. What makes Oak Island so compelling isn't just what's been found, it's the engineering. Beneath the island, sonar scans and excavation efforts have revealed a complex network of shafts, flood tunnels, and stone mine passages, some believed to be booby-trapped. At Smith's Cove, workers uncovered wooden platforms, drains, and a system of channels thought to connect directly to the Money Pit, designed, it seems, to protect whatever lies below from being recovered. But protect what, exactly? That's where the theories spiral. Some say it's pirate treasure, perhaps buried by the infamous Captain Kidd or Blackbeard. Others believe it's the lost treasures of the Knights Templar, including the Holy Grail or the Ark of the Covenant, hidden during their escape from persecution in Europe. Some suggest the pit holds Shakespeare's original manuscripts, smuggled away by Francis Bacon to preserve hidden knowledge. And there are even more far-reaching ideas. A deposit of Rosicrucian secrets. A Viking hoard. A pre-Columbian cache from an unknown civilization. A massive alchemical vault meant to be opened at a specific moment in history. Each new excavation seems to confirm the same thing. Someone went to extraordinary lengths to bury something. But what that something is, and whether it still exists, remains elusive. As the centuries pass, the island continues to consume both fortunes and lives. At least 6 people have died in the pursuit, victims of cave-ins, gas leaks, and machinery failures. And yet the digging goes on, now fueled by international attention and modern technology, including the History Channel's long-running series, The Curse of Oak Island. Still, the core question has never changed. Was there ever really a treasure? Or has Oak Island been playing a long, clever game with the human mind, luring generation after generation into a mystery that was never meant to be solved? Perhaps the treasure isn't gold at all. Perhaps it's the story, a trap made of secrets, deeper than any shaft, darker than any tunnel. And so Oak Island remains what it has always been. A hole in the earth. And in that hole, a question. Next, we leave behind man-made shafts and flood traps, and turn our gaze skyward, toward the Peruvian desert, where great lines stretch across the earth like messages to the stars. Not drawn in ink, not carved in stone, but scraped into the planet itself, large enough to be seen only from the heavens. The Nazca Lines, Bolivia's endless geoglyphs. High in the Altiplano of western Bolivia, where thin air brushes against the skin and the snow-capped peak of Mount Sahama looms in silent majesty, lies a mystery almost too large to see. Not carved in stone or hidden beneath ruins, but etched directly into the earth, across a barren, wind-blasted landscape. They are not animals, not symbols, just lines, endless, perfectly straight lines. Known as the Sahama Lines, this vast network of geoglyphs stretches across thousands of square kilometers of high desert, a spiderweb of white etchings covering an area larger than the city of Los Angeles. Individually, they are barely noticeable. But viewed from above, the land becomes a kind of canvas, scored with hundreds of thousands of narrow paths, each one carved into the surface by hand. Straight lines, stretching for miles, over hills, rivers, cliffs, and valleys. And yet, they never curve. They never waver. Let's begin with the basics. The Sahama Lines are thought to have been created over 3,000 years, likely by the indigenous Aymara people. Each line is about 1 to 3 meters wide, and the entire network is estimated to contain over 16,000 kilometers of individual lines, all carved by scraping away the dark, oxidized surface layer of soil to reveal the lighter earth beneath. But unlike Peru's Nazca Lines, which form distinct images visible from the air, the Sahama Lines are almost aggressively non-symbolic. There are no hummingbirds, no monkeys, no spirals. Just mathematical perfection, lines running in all directions, yet rarely crossing, rarely overlapping, always straight. How were they made? No modern surveying tools. No satellites. No GPS. And yet the lines are perfectly linear, often extending for 20 kilometers or more without deviation, even across rugged, uneven terrain. Some theorists believe they were created using a technique of line-of-sight alignment, possibly using stone cairns or wooden posts to plot the paths over long distances. But even if that explains how, why remains a far more difficult question. The most accepted theory is that the Sahama Lines formed part of a ritual landscape. That the lines connected sacred sites, such as burial towers, chulpas, shrines, villages, and mountain peaks. In this view, the lines were pilgrimage routes, paths walked in religious ceremonies, forming a kind of spiritual grid across the landscape. Perhaps each line marked a journey, a memory, or a prayer, not made to be seen from above, but to be experienced with the body, step by step, across the high plains. But this theory has problems. Many lines don't lead directly to major sites. Some veer into open desert. Some connect to nothing. Others overlap old paths or pass through known ceremonial areas without stopping. There is no consistency, no pattern, only the sheer, almost obsessive repetition of straightness. Then there's the scale. This is not the work of one generation, or one tribe. It is the accumulation of thousands of years of effort. People across centuries chose to mark the earth in the same way, using the same method, adhering to the same invisible logic. Why? No texts remain. No oral tradition fully explains them. The Aymara elders recognize the lines, honor them, but do not claim to know their full purpose. To them, the lines are part of the living land, sacred and ancient, but not understood. And so, other theories have emerged. Some researchers have proposed that the lines may have served as astronomical alignments, tracking the positions of stars, solstices, or planetary movements. But so far, no clear correlation has been found. Others have gone further, suggesting that the Sahama Lines may have been territorial boundaries, or even messages to the sky. A few fringe theorists have floated the idea that they were meant for beings who could see from above, not unlike similar theories about Nazca. But what separates Sahama from other geoglyph sites is its unrelenting simplicity. It is not art. It is not narrative. It is something else. Some have described it as a kind of earth circuit, a physical manifestation of thought or energy, meant to be walked, activated by motion. A ritual system not meant to be seen, but felt. Like a memory etched into land instead of language. And so the lines remain, enduring the erosion of time, almost invisible from the ground, yet sprawling beyond comprehension when seen from the sky. No fences protect them. No tourists swarm them. No signs point to their meaning. They simply exist, as they have for millennia. Lines without origin. Paths without maps. Messages without words. We now move from lines in the earth to massive stones standing in eternal silence, on a remote Scottish island, where a prehistoric circle of monoliths watches the stars with a precision that should be impossible. Callanish Stones, Scotland's starlit circle. On the remote Isle of Lewis in Scotland's windswept Outer Hebrides, the land meets the sky in silence. Here, the wind sings over peat bogs and rolling hills, across centuries of isolation. And on a lonely rise above the sea, a ring of ancient stones stands as though frozen in ritual, weathered, towering, still. This is the Callanish Stone Circle. Less famous than Stonehenge, yet older and perhaps even more astronomically aligned, the Callanish stones, sometimes spelled Callanize, have stood for over 5,000 years. They form a cruciform pattern, a central circle with long rows of standing stones extending in 4 directions, like a compass laid out in granite. The stones vary in height, some reaching nearly 16 feet, others more modest. There are 13 stones in the main circle, with avenues of additional stones radiating outward, forming a shape unlike any other megalithic site in the British Isles. Nearby, smaller circles and solitary standing stones extend for miles, suggesting Callanish was part of a sacred complex, a spiritual landscape now half swallowed by time. But the deeper mystery lies not in how the stones were arranged, but in why. Let's start with the sky. Researchers have long noted that the Callanish stones are aligned with specific astronomical phenomena. The most striking is their connection to the lunar cycle, particularly the major lunar standstill, an event that occurs once every 18.6 years, when the moon reaches its extreme rising and setting points on the horizon. During this rare event, the moon appears to skim along the horizon, rising and setting in near-perfect alignment with the stones. To an observer standing at the center of the circle, the full moon would seem to travel along the length of the northern avenue, hover low, and dip into the surrounding landscape in a display of celestial choreography. This is no accident. Such precision would require not only careful observation of the moon over decades, but an understanding of long-term celestial cycles, knowledge usually attributed to much later civilizations. Yet the builders of Callanish had no writing, no telescopes, no metal instruments. Only stone, time, and memory. So how did they do it? And more importantly, why? Some archaeologists believe the site served as a lunar observatory, used to track the passage of time and predict eclipses, harvest seasons, or sacred festivals. Others see it as a ritual space, where ceremonies were performed to honor the moon, the sun, or deities now lost to history. Then there are those who suggest something deeper, that the stones were part of a cosmic map, linking earth to sky, body to star, life to death. The layout has been compared to solar and lunar calendars, and some patterns may even reflect the movement of Venus or other celestial bodies. But there are no inscriptions, no myths preserved in writing, no trace of the people who raised the stones, not even the name they once gave them. The earliest written references come thousands of years after the circle was abandoned. And yet, the stones remain. Some locals believe the circle was once a gathering place for giants, turned to stone for defying a divine order. Others say the site holds energetic power, a place where the veil between worlds is thin, where the living once spoke to the dead under the moon's light. New Age visitors and spiritual seekers often describe a strange sensation within the circle, a shift in pressure, a feeling of presence, or an inexplicable peace. Scientists dismiss these as subjective impressions, but even they admit, the stones have a kind of awe. They were raised by human hands. But they speak of something larger than human life. And so the Callanish stones stand, ancient, immovable, and unreadable. A compass that points not to the north, but to the stars. In a world where the sky was not a mystery to be solved, but a force to be honored, these stones may have been more than markers. They may have been participants in a ritual that stretched across generations into the heavens. We now journey from Scotland to Egypt, where a half-buried sentinel guards the desert sands. A statue carved from a single block of stone, weathered by wind and time, its face worn but watching still. Its body is that of a lion, its head that of a man, and its secrets remain as vast as the desert itself. The Great Sphinx of Giza, Egypt's riddling guardian. On the edge of the Giza Plateau, where the desert meets the skyline of modern Cairo, one figure has stared across millennia, silent, stoic, and shrouded in mystery. Half buried in sand carved from bedrock, it is at once majestic and unsettling. A lion's body lies crouched beneath a human head, gazing eternally toward the rising sun. This is the Great Sphinx of Giza, and no one truly knows why it was built, who it represents, or how old it really is. It is the largest monolithic statue in the world, carved from a single mass of limestone over 240 feet long, 66 feet high, and 62 feet wide. Even stripped of its original paint and missing its nose, the Sphinx commands presence, not merely as a sculpture, but as a guardian, a question carved in stone. Mainstream Egyptology attributes the Sphinx to Pharaoh Khafre, who reigned around 2500 BC, during the 4th dynasty of the Old Kingdom. The evidence is circumstantial, primarily based on its location near Khafre's pyramid and a single, incomplete statue of him found nearby that shares similar facial features. But the Sphinx itself bears no inscriptions, no cartouche, no name. It does not speak for itself. That silence has invited centuries of speculation. Let's begin with the most fundamental question. How old is the Sphinx, really? While most Egyptologists maintain the 2500 BC date, some geologists and independent researchers have challenged that timeline. They point to the deep vertical weathering on the Sphinx's body and enclosure walls, patterns more consistent with water erosion than with wind and sand. Given that significant rainfall hasn't occurred on the Giza Plateau for over 5,000 years, this theory suggests the Sphinx may be much older, possibly predating the dynastic Egyptian civilization by thousands of years. If true, that would mean the Sphinx wasn't built by the Egyptians, but by a lost civilization, one with skills in stone carving, astronomical alignment, and monument building, and one that left no written record. And then there's the matter of the head. The body of the Sphinx is massive and muscular, powerful, leonine. The head, however, is disproportionately small, leading some to suggest that the original head may have been something else entirely, perhaps a lion, or another animal, and was recarved later into a pharaoh's likeness. If so, it raises the question: what was the original face? And who or what did it represent? Some theories propose the Sphinx is far older and was originally a lion, symbolizing the constellation Leo, and that it once aligned with the stars during a now distant epoch, possibly around 10,500 BC. In this view, the Sphinx served as part of a larger celestial calendar, marking the equinox and pointing toward a forgotten cycle of time. Others believe the Sphinx holds hidden chambers beneath it, rooms of knowledge, or relics of a lost age. In 1993, ground-penetrating radar surveys by researchers including Thomas Tebeki and John Anthony West revealed anomalies beneath the Sphinx's paws, voids, possibly chambers, yet to be excavated. Egyptian authorities have allowed limited exploration, but much remains off-limits. Then there is the ancient riddle of the Sphinx itself, not just as a monument, but as a symbol. In later Greek mythology, the Sphinx became a creature of riddles, famously asking travelers, "What walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs at noon, and 3 in the evening? But the Egyptian Sphinx predates this myth by millennia. It is not a monster here, but perhaps a guardian, of sacred knowledge, of the horizon, of the line between the mortal and the divine. It faces the east, where the sun rises, perhaps not just to mark time, but to honor Ra, the sun god, or some deeper cosmic rhythm. Some have speculated the Sphinx marks the entrance to something buried, not treasure, but truth. A repository of lost history, erased from the official record, hidden beneath the sands. And yet, through every theory, excavation, and laser scan, the Sphinx remains mute. Its paws once bore an inscription, the Dream Stele, erected by Pharaoh Thutmose IV in the 15th century BC. It tells a tale of a prince who slept in the shadow of the Sphinx, and received a dream promising kingship if he would uncover the monument from the sand. He did, and he became king. But even this story doesn't answer the deeper questions. Because the Sphinx isn't just a statue. It's a boundary, between myth and memory, between what is known and what is not meant to be. It watches the world. It waits for something. Or maybe it simply endures, a riddle with no solution, staring into eternity. Now we turn our attention away from the desert and into the earth itself, where caves once echoed with voices and torchlight, and walls came alive with paintings of beasts long vanished. Deep beneath the surface of France lies one of humanity's most ancient messages, not written in language, but in art. Lascaux cave paintings. Who are the first artists of the deep? Deep beneath the green hills of southwestern France, hidden behind a narrow entrance and a winding descent into stone, lies a place that feels more like a temple than a cave. The air is still, the darkness total, until artificial light reveals the walls. And then, the stone comes alive. Towering bulls, galloping horses, antlered stags, and horned ibex dance across the limestone in earthy reds, deep blacks, golden ochres, and subtle browns. Some figures are static, others pulse with motion, as if caught mid-stride. Some have been outlined multiple times, perhaps to show movement. Others are layered, overlapping like memory. This is Lascaux Cave, home to what many call the Sistine Chapel of prehistoric art. Discovered in 1940 by a group of teenagers chasing a lost dog, the cave stunned archaeologists with its scale and complexity. More than 600 painted animals and over 1,500 engravings adorn the walls, stretching across chambers, tunnels, and ceilings. The paintings are believed to be more than 17,000 years old, dating to the Upper Paleolithic period, long before writing, agriculture, or permanent settlements. And yet, the art is breathtakingly sophisticated. The animals are rendered with precision and fluidity. Their proportions are accurate. Their muscles are defined. Shading, perspective, and motion are all suggested with a mastery that seems impossible for a people supposedly primitive. These weren't random doodles. They were intentional, symbolic, crafted with purpose. But what purpose? That question remains unanswered. Some scholars argue that the caves served a ritualistic or religious function, a sacred space where early humans performed ceremonies to ensure hunting success or connect with the spirit world. Others see it as an early storytelling medium, with each animal representing a myth, a memory, or a message passed from one generation to the next. And some believe it was a place of initiation, accessible only to a chosen few, its images part of a rite of passage, teaching young members of the group the mysteries of life, death, and survival. But if Lascaux was sacred, it was also hidden. The cave lies hundreds of feet underground, accessible only through a narrow entrance and twisting passageways. The artists would have worked in total darkness, lighting their way with animal fat lamps, painting with pigments ground from minerals, applied with brushes made of hair, moss, or their own fingers. They mixed colors. They sprayed pigment through hollow bones. They carved out lines into the rock before filling them in. This wasn't a casual act. It was deliberate, reverent, and repeated across generations. There are no depictions of landscapes. No trees. No rivers. No daily life. Only animals. And then, something stranger. In a secluded chamber known as the Shaft of the Dead Man, a rare human figure appears. A man, stick-like, with arms outstretched, lies seemingly dead at the feet of a wounded bison. His entrails spill from the animal. A bird-topped staff lies beside him. It is the only narrative scene in the cave. And no one knows what it means. Was it a myth? A dream? A memory of a shamanic vision? Why here, in the deepest, most hidden part of the cave? The artists of Lascaux left no names, no dates, no explanations. We don't even know what language they spoke, if they had language at all. But what they did leave was art. Not crude. Not childish. But complex, emotive, and enduring. And that's what makes the mystery so profound. Because to stand inside Lascaux, even a replica, since the original cave has been closed to protect it from damage, is to feel the presence of minds like ours. Hands like ours. Eyes that saw the world not as savages, but as observers, storytellers, and creators. People who, in a world of hardship and survival, still crawled into the earth and painted life on the walls of darkness. To be remembered. To be heard. And now, tens of thousands of years later, we hear them. Not in words, but in shapes. In motion. In color. And in silence. From the depths of painted caves, we move now to the frozen heights of the Andes, where a child, perfectly preserved, sleeps on a mountain. Not by accident. Not by disaster. But as part of a sacred ritual so solemn, so ancient, that her sacrifice remains untouched by time. The Ice Maiden of Yayako, a perfectly preserved sacrifice. High in the desolate reaches of the Andes, where oxygen thins and temperatures plummet below freezing, stands Mount Yayako, a volcano straddling the border of Chile and Argentina. Its summit, over 22,000 feet above sea level, is one of the highest places on Earth ever touched by ancient human hands. And there, in 1999, a team of archaeologists made a haunting discovery. Beneath a mound of rocks, sheltered in a small ceremonial chamber, sat the body of a young girl. Her legs were crossed. Her hands rested gently in her lap. Her head tilted forward, as though she had simply fallen asleep. Her skin, hair, clothing, even the contents of her stomach, were perfectly preserved. She became known to the world as the Ice Maiden of Yayako. But she was not alone. 2 other children were found with her, a younger girl and a boy, all sacrificed by the Inca civilization more than 500 years ago, as part of a sacred ritual known as Capacocha. It was a ceremony performed to honor the gods. And it required death, not as punishment, but as a gift. Let's begin with the child at the center. The Ice Maiden, also called La Doncella, the maiden, was around 13 to 15 years old. She wore a finely woven tunic and had braided hair, tied with red and white cords. Chemical analysis of her remains revealed that she had been selected for sacrifice over a year before her death. In the final months of her life, her diet changed dramatically, from a peasant's fare of vegetables and quinoa to elite foods like maize and llama meat. She was groomed, honored, prepared. In her final days, she consumed coca leaves and chicha, a fermented corn beer, likely to calm her nerves or induce unconsciousness. And then, she was led up the mountain. Not dragged or forced, but escorted in solemn procession, surrounded by priests, offerings, and the weight of the divine. At that altitude, the air is thin, the cold relentless. Death would come slowly, peacefully, in sleep. The Incas believed that those chosen for Capacocha did not die. They joined the gods, becoming immortal protectors of their people. The sacrifice was not cruelty. It was honor. A profound, terrifying form of reverence. But to modern eyes, the scene is heartbreaking. Her face is serene, but her posture is not. CT scans show signs of pulmonary infection. She may have been sick at the time of her death. There is evidence she was sedated. Her mouth still contains the chewed remnants of coca leaves. The younger girl, dubbed La Nina del Rio, the Lightning Girl, bore burn marks, suggesting she may have been struck posthumously by lightning. The boy, just 4 to 5 years old, was wrapped tightly in cloth, buried alongside miniature figurines, shell ornaments, and tiny crafted items, symbols of status and spiritual offering. The chamber they were found in had remained sealed since the moment of burial. Cold, dry, untouched, a natural time capsule in the heart of the mountains. What makes the Ice Maiden so mysterious is not just her preservation, but what her story represents. Why did the Incas climb to such extremes to perform these rites? Why sacrifice children, often the most beautiful, healthy, and unblemished, on mountaintops, far from any settlement? The Incas believed the Apis, mountain spirits, held power over weather, fertility, and fate. To gain their favor, one had to offer something pure. The higher the mountain, the closer to the heavens. Each child was selected with purpose, not killed in violence, but given in ceremony, swaddled in belief. But did the children understand? Were they told of their destiny? Did they feel pride or fear? We will never know. Their voices are gone, sealed behind lips that have not moved in 500 years. And yet they remain. Not in myth, but in flesh and bone, unrotted by time. The Ice Maiden is not a reconstruction or a carving. She is herself, as she was that final day, her skin still smooth, her clothes intact, her presence strangely alive. Her discovery forces us to confront something rarely seen. The intersection of faith and mortality, ritual and reality, beauty and death. It blurs the line between victim and chosen one, between tragedy and transcendence. Today, she rests in a controlled chamber in the Museum of High-Altitude Archaeology in Salta, Argentina. She is visible to visitors, but watched over with reverence. Not a curiosity. A guardian. A child sacrificed to the sky, and now, remembered by the world. Next, we descend from the mountains into the dense green of Cambodia's jungles, where a stone temple rises like a vision of heaven, carved not only with gods and demons but with cosmic precision. A city lost to time, whose grandeur still echoes through the trees. Angkor Wat, Cambodia's celestial temple. Deep in the heart of Cambodia, where tropical jungles reclaim stone and vines curl through ancient archways, rises a monument so vast, so intricate, that it seems less built than dreamed into being. At dawn, its silhouette reflects in still waters, and the rising sun crowns its towers with golden light. It is not only a temple. It is a vision carved in stone, a mirror of heaven set upon the earth. This is Angkor Wat. The largest religious monument in the world, Angkor Wat was constructed in the early 12th century by the Khmer king Suryavarman II. Originally dedicated to the Hindu god Vishnu, it later became a sacred Buddhist site. But its true identity transcends religion. Because Angkor Wat is more than a place of worship. It is a cosmic diagram, a temple built to embody time, space, and the order of the universe itself. Let's begin with the structure. The central tower rises over 200 feet, flanked by 4 smaller towers in a quincunx pattern, echoing the peaks of Mount Meru, the mythical center of the universe in Hindu cosmology. The surrounding moat represents the cosmic ocean, The outer walls mirror the edges of the world. Every dimension, every axis, every gate and corridor reflects an aspect of the heavens. But that's just the start. The temple is aligned with astounding astronomical precision. During the spring equinox, the sun rises directly over the central tower when viewed from the western entrance, a phenomenon unlikely to be accidental. The causeways, galleries, and courtyards are oriented to track solar and lunar cycles, as well as planetary movements. Carvings and bas-reliefs echo these themes, depicting not only mythological events, but the passage of time itself. And time is encoded in the very stones. The temple contains 108 lotus towers, 365 steps, and walls measured to match lunar months and solar years. Scholars have proposed that Angkor Wat functions as a three-dimensional calendar, a sacred observatory where priests or architects could track the motion of the cosmos, using the temple itself as a clock. But why? Why would an ancient king devote so much effort, years of labor, thousands of workers, massive resources, to construct a structure that replicates the sky? Some believe Angkor Wat was intended as a bridge between realms, a portal connecting the earthly world to the divine, a throne for gods and a tomb for kings. In this view, Suryavarman II wasn't just building a temple. He was creating his afterlife, encoded in stone, fixed in eternity. The bas-reliefs that wind through the galleries depict both religious epics, such as the churning of the ocean of milk, and scenes of daily life, battle, and sacrifice. They are not just decoration. They are narratives, a visual scripture meant to guide, instruct, and immortalize. And yet, for all its grandeur, Angkor Wat was forgotten. By the 16th century, the Khmer Empire had fallen. The jungle crept in. Vines overtook the towers. Trees split stone. And for centuries, Angkor Wat lay abandoned, known only to local villagers and Buddhist monks who tended its shrines in silence. It wasn't until European explorers arrived in the 19th century that the temple returned to global awareness, and even then, they were stunned by what they saw. Not just ruins, but a lost city, an entire civilization's soul carved into the forest. What remains unexplained is how such precision was achieved. The Khmer builders had no modern instruments, no cranes, no advanced measuring tools. Yet the scale is perfect, the symmetry breathtaking, the astronomical alignments exact. The sandstone used in its construction was transported from a quarry more than 30 miles away, floated on rafts and carved by hand. And all of it without cement or mortar, just weight, balance, and will. What drove this vision? Faith? Power? Legacy? Or something older? A belief that to carve the cosmos into stone was to command eternity itself? Even today, Angkor Wat pulses with quiet mystery. Pilgrims still walk its corridors. Monks chant beneath its towers. Tourists pass through, drawn by something they can't name. Because Angkor Wat is not just architecture. It's memory. It's math written in myth. It is a civilization's attempt to place itself in the stars, and be remembered forever. We now travel west, to a different kind of monument, one less grand in size, but staggering in mystery. A stone slab covered in 3 scripts, discovered by chance, that unlocked a forgotten language and changed our understanding of the ancient world forever. The Rosetta Stone, the code that spoke for Egypt. In 1799, during Napoleon's Egyptian campaign, a group of French soldiers digging trenches near the Nile town of Rosetta stumbled upon a black basalt slab lodged in the earth. Dust-covered, cracked, and incomplete, it bore no glittering treasure, just lines of carved text, 3 distinct sets of inscriptions stacked one above the other. They had no idea what they'd found. But that broken stone would go on to unlock one of humanity's greatest lost languages, and change the way we understand the ancient world. It became known as the Rosetta Stone. Measuring just under 4 feet tall and weighing around 1,700 pounds, the stone contains the same passage of writing inscribed in 3 scripts: hieroglyphic, demotic, and ancient Greek. It wasn't sacred poetry or secret prophecy, just a royal decree issued in 196 BC, praising Pharaoh Ptolemy V. But it wasn't what the message said that mattered. It was how it said it. Because for over 1,400 years, the ability to read Egyptian hieroglyphs had been lost. The walls of temples, tombs, and obelisks were covered with symbols no one could understand. Scholars had tried to decipher them for centuries, but without a bilingual key, the language remained mute, a civilization silenced. The Rosetta Stone broke that silence. It provided the same text in a known language, ancient Greek, alongside 2 unknown ones. The bottom third, in Greek, could be read. The middle, demotic, was a later form of Egyptian cursive script. And the top, the real prize, was the elaborate, sacred writing of the pharaohs, hieroglyphics. It would take years of effort and a war of ideas, but eventually, the code would crack. French linguist Jean-François Champollion, after more than a decade of study, made the final breakthrough in 1822. By comparing the 3 versions of the text, he identified names, royal names like Ptolemy and Cleopatra, repeated across scripts. He realized hieroglyphs were not just symbols of ideas, as many believed, but a combination of phonetic sounds and ideograms. The writing of ancient Egypt wasn't decorative. It was language. And with that, the voice of a civilization returned. For the first time in over a millennium, the stories on temple walls could be read. Tombs could speak. Papyrus scrolls could be translated. Entire worlds, myths, records, philosophies, came pouring back through the crack opened by the Rosetta Stone. But the stone itself remains a mystery of another kind. Why was this decree written in 3 scripts? Who was meant to read it? Was it a message of inclusion, an attempt to bridge cultures within the diverse and multilingual Ptolemaic kingdom? Or was it a display of power, a ruler's proclamation carved in every tongue of the land? And what of the missing piece? The Rosetta Stone is incomplete. The top portion, including a significant part of the hieroglyphic text, has been broken off. What it once said, and whether other, similar stones exist, remains unknown. Today, the Rosetta Stone resides in the British Museum, its possession still contested by Egypt, which has called for its repatriation. To millions, it is just a tourist attraction, a relic behind glass. But to those who understand its story, it is far more. It is the key. Not to treasure or myth, but to meaning. To language. To thought. To memory. It's not just a stone. It's a resurrection, not of a body, but of a voice. And with that voice, the ancient world came back to life. With this final mystery, we bring our journey to a close, a journey through riddles and stone, whispers in parchment, and voices carried through time. We have walked among vanished cities, stood before mute statues, and listened to echoes from caves, temples, and tombs. Some questions were answered. Most were not. But perhaps mystery is not something to be solved, but preserved. Not a puzzle to end, but a doorway, to wonder, to humility, and to the vastness of human memory. The past does not speak plainly. It hints. It hides. It waits. And we, seekers, skeptics, and storytellers, are drawn ever deeper. Thank you for walking this path. The next mystery is always just beneath the dust.